Good day, this is Q from Golden Circle Games, and for a long time now I've been working on a mono white angels only deck. I've been trying various commanders at the head of this deck, from Avacyn to Giada, and eventually settled on her ladyship Lyra. I'm glad to say that the deck is finally done, and I will be presenting her to you today. Lyra is the leader of the Order of Dawn, named for the famous angel Reya Dawnbringer. Lyra continues Reya's mission of protecting Benalia in her absence. Lyra is sometimes accused of being too involved in Benalish affairs, a course of action she's more likely to justify than deny. She guards Benalia city from those who would cause it harm, and from those who are dwellers in the darkness, those like Lilliana. Lyra Dawnbringer is a 3 and 2 white angel with flying, first strike and lifelink. She is +5/+5 and she gives all your other angels +1/+1 and lifelink, which makes her a valuable creature to have at the head of an angel deck. The aim of this deck is to play evasive and powerful creatures, gain lots of life and use that life for value such as drawing cards. The win cons here are creature swing, lots of huge angels flying in for the damage, for the kill, for the win, or using the life we gain to drain our opponents. There is one sneaky win con in the deck, but it's a little janky, but quite fun if you can get it out for long enough. And the price of the deck is €550 or $550 or €360. So first there's Soul Ring, which we can tap to add 2 colourless mana. Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. Arcane Signet, which we can tap to add 1 mana of any colour in our commander's identity. Then we have Mind Stone, which we can tap it to add a colourless, or we can pay 1 and tap it to sacrifice it and draw a card. Pearl Medallion, which makes our white spells cost 1 less to cast. And Commander's Sphere, which we can tap to add a mana of any colour in our commander's colour identity, or we can sack it to draw a card. We have Hadron Archive, which we can tap to add 2 mana. We can also pay 2 to sacrifice it and draw 2 cards. Nyx Lotus enters the battlefield tapped, but we can tap it to choose a colour, add any amount of colour equal to our devotion to that colour onto our mana, into our mana pool. Thran Dynamo taps to add 3 colourless mana. Then we have Smothering Tithe. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colourless treasure artifact token with sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any colour. Then we have Gilded Lotus, which we can tap to add 3 mana of any one colour. Coveted Jewel, which when it enters the battlefield draws us 3 cards. We can add 3 mana of any colour, and whenever 1 or more creatures an opponent controls attacks and you aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of Coveted Jewel, untapping it, which we can use our evasive creatures to get back should anyone take it from us. And we have Caged Sun. When it enters the battlefield, choose a colour. Creatures you control of the chosen colour get +1/+1, and whenever a land's ability causes you to add 1 or more mana of the chosen colour, add 1 additional mana of that colour as well. The Immortal Sun. Players can't activate Planeswalker loyalty abilities at the beginning of your draw step. Draw an additional card, and spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and creatures you control get +1/+1. It's a bit of a toolbox for our deck. We've got Dawn of Hope. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. We can pay 3 and a white to create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. Then we have Folk Hero, which is a legendary enchantment background. Commander creatures you control have, whenever you cast a spell that shares a creature type with this creature, draw a card. We can only activate that ability once each turn. Herald's Horn enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. We're going to choose Angels. Creature spells of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast, and at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card of the chosen type, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. And then we have Well of Lost Dreams. Whenever you gain life, you may pay X, where X is less than or equal to the amount of life you gained. If you do, draw X cards. And Vanquisher's Banner, as it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. We're going to choose Angels. Creatures you control of that chosen type get +1/+1, and whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card. Brought back, choose up to 2 target permanent cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. Return them to the battlefield tapped. Lapse of Certainty, counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, put it on top of its owner's library instead of in the player's playground. Teferi's Protection, great instant spell for protecting our board, protecting our life total. Until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. Exile Teferi's Protection. Unbreakable Formation, 2 and a white. Creatures you control gain indestructible till the end of turn. If you cast it during your main phase, you can put +1/+1 to counter on each of those creatures, and they gain vigilance until the end of turn. Settle the Wreckage, great defensive spell if somebody's playing something like Craterhoof. Exile all attacking creatures target player controls. That player may search his or her library for that many basic land cards, put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle their library. Swords to Plowshares, exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. Then we have Path to Exile, exile target creature, its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Wrath of God, great if we've got Avacyn out, destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated. Fumigate, again, great if we've got Avacyn out. Destroy all creatures, you gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way, so it could be a pretty big blowout for us. Then Ondu Inversion, destroy all non-land permanents, again fantastic if we have Avacyn out. It also comes in, if we don't need it, we can put it into the battlefield tapped as a land. Ajani, Strength of the Pride, +1, you gain life equal to the number of creatures you control. Not really an important ability. Again, the -2 is not really an important ability. We can create a 2/2 Ajani Pride Mate with whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on it. But we're really playing it for that 0 if you have at least 15 or more life, which we often have with this deck. Exile Ajani, Strength of the Pride, and each artifact and creature your opponents control. In this deck, it is a one-sided board wipe, even worse than Cyclonic Rift. Fantastic in this deck. Luminar Ascension, which at the beginning of each player's end step, if you didn't lose life this turn, you may put a quest counter on Luminar Ascension, and then eventually if we have 4 quest counters on it, we can pay 1 and a white and create a 4/4 white angel creature token. This is absolutely bonkers. You don't have to tap it or anything, you just pay 1 and a white and you get a 4/4, and a 4/4 is huge in this game, especially with flying. Absolutely fantastic. Book of the Exalted Deeds is 3 white for a artifact that has at the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, create a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. We're always going to gain a bunch of life with this deck, and additionally we can pay 3, tap it, exile the Book of Deeds, put an item counter on an angel. It gains you can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game, and we can only activate this as a sorcery. Angelic Accord, at the beginning of each end step, if you gain 4 or more life this turn, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. Again, we're always going to be drawing and gaining life to that kind of degree. Finale of Glory, we can pay X and 2 white, create X 2/2 white soldier tokens with vigilance, and if X is 10 or more, we also create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance. Fantastic, we can get 20 odd creatures on the field in one spell, just brilliant. Sarah the Benevolent, +2 creatures you control with flying get +1/+1 to the end of turn. That's all the creatures in our deck. Created 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance for its -3 and -6. You get an emblem with, if you control a creature, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. Great protection there if we can get it. Door of Destinies, when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, and whenever that kind of creature comes into the battlefield, put a charge counter on Door of Destinies, and creatures we control of the chosen type get a +1/+1 for each charge counter on Door of Destinies. Now we have to cast our creatures, so it doesn't work for our token generators, but it really does work for this deck to give our creatures huge power. One of our win cons here, Aether Flux Reservoir. Whenever we cast a spell, we gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn, and we can pay 50 life. Aether Flux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. We also have Coat of Arms that makes all our creatures get +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least 1 creature type with it. So if anybody else has angels too, our creatures get a pump for those angels as well. This also benefits some of our opponents, so we might be careful about playing this against token decks, just because this actually pumps every creature on the battlefield, not just our own. So moving on to the meat of the deck, we have Giada, Font of Hope for 2 mana. We have a Flying Vigilance Angel. Whenever another angel enters the battlefield, it gets an additional 1/1 counter on it for each angel you control. That can get really out of hand very quickly, and we can also tap it early game, tap it mostly in the game, to add 1 white mana and spend it only to cast angel spells. Angel of Vitality, if you would gain life, you gain that much +1 instead, and it gets +2/+2 as long as you have 25 life or more. So for 3 mana we get a 4/4 in EDH, pretty epic for that. Emancipation Angel has flying. Whenever it enters the battlefield, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. That can be pretty good for this deck. We have Resplendent Angel as flying. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 5 or more life this turn, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance, and then we can pay 3 and 3 white until the end of the turn. Resplendent Angel gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink, so we can use that as our 5 life. And then Righteous Valkyrie has flying. Whenever another angel or cleric enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. That includes our tokens as well. As long as you have 7 or more life than your starting life total, creatures you control get +2/+2. A 3 mana +2/+2 board wide pump is just fantastic in this deck. Angel Finality, flying. When an angel enters the battlefield, exile all cards from a target player's graveyard. Great graveyard interaction there. Angel of Jubilation, flying. Other non-black creatures you control get +1/+1, and players can't sacrifice or pay life to cast spells or activate abilities. So they can't sacrifice creatures or play life to cast spells or activate abilities. Lyra, Keeper of Silence, is very similar, has flying. Activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated. Thraben Watcher has flying and vigilance. Another non-token creature, other non-token creatures you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. Great for protecting us from the backswing of a big, another big token or creature deck. Angel of Destiny is our sneaky wing con. You know, it has flying, double strike, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player gain as much life. So you will also get the life link and this trigger as well, so you will gain double that much life usually if you have your commander out. At the beginning of your end step, if you have at least 15 life more than your starting life total, which please, this is not difficult with this deck at all. Each player Angel of Destiny attacked this turn loses the game, so it doesn't have to connect, it just has to attack. It can be blocked, but if it attacked a player at the end of your turn, if that player doesn't deal with it, that player dies. Angel of Grace, flash, flying, whenever it enters the battlefield, any damage that reduces my life total to less than 1 deals it to 1 instead, and we can exile it from our graveyard. Our life total becomes 10. Angel of Sanctions, flying, whenever Angel of Sanctions enter the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Angel of Sanctions leaves the battlefield, and we also get to exile this card from our graveyard, create a token copy of it. That's a white zombie angel with no mana cost, and we can only do that as a sorcery. So lots of dragon decks out there at the moment, and Baneslayer Angel is really more important now than it's ever been. It has flying, first strike, lifelink, protection from demons and protection from dragons, and it's a pretty beefy 5/5 creature. Herald of War, whenever it attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it, and angel spells and human spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each 1/1 counter on Herald of War, which can be pretty good fun for this deck. Karmic Guide has flying, protection from black, also has Echo 3, so at the beginning of our upkeep, if it came under our control since the beginning of the last upkeep, sacrifice it unless we pay its Echo cost, and when Karmic Guide enters the battlefield, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Admonition Angel, flying, landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may exile target non-land permanent another other than Admonition Angel, and when it leaves the battlefield, return all cards exiled with it to the battlefield under their owner's control. Angelic Guardian, flying, whenever one or more creatures you control attacks, they gain indestructible until the end of turn. Great if we've got a board wipe in our hand, we can protect our whole board. Angelic Skirmisher, flying, at the beginning of each combat, choose First Strike, Vigilance or Lifelink. Creatures you control gain that ability till the end of turn. Most of the time we're going to pick Vigilance. If we've got a Vigilance creature out already, then we'll probably pick First Strike. It's pretty interesting for this deck. We have Sarah's Guardian, flying, vigilance, other creatures you control have vigilance, so another vigilance giver. Sunblast Angel, flying, when a Sunblast Angel enters the battlefield, destroy all tapped creatures, and if we can bounce it back to our hand, then we can send it back in again and destroy even more tapped creatures later on in the game. Twilight Shepherd, flying, vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, return to our hand all cards in our graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn, and it has persist as well, so if there is a board wipe, we can return all our cards that were on the battlefield into our hands so we can recast them again. We have another token generator in Valkyrie Harbinger, flying, lifelink, at the beginning of each end step. If you gain 4 or more life this turn, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. Chroma Vision of Ixidor, flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, plenty of keywords there. At the beginning of each combat until the end of the turn, each other creature you control gets +1/+1. If it has flying, it also gets it for first strike, double strike, death touch, haste, hexproof, indestructible, vigilance, menace, protection, and reach, trample, vigilance, and partner. Angelic Arbiter, it has flying. Each opponent who casts a spell this turn can't attack with creatures. Each opponent who attacked creatures this turn can't cast spells. Amiria Shepherd, flying landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return target non-land permanent you control from the graveyard to your hand. If it's a plains that enters the battlefield, you may return a non-land permanent to the battlefield instead, which is going to be pretty powerful for this deck. Avacyn, Agent of Hope, flying, vigilance, indestructible. Other permanents you control have indestructible. Fantastic for protecting our whole board state here. And for our lands, we have Field of Ruin. Tap to add a colourless. Tap 2, sacrifice it, destroy it, target non-basic land and opponent controls. Homeward Path, we can tap it to add a colourless, or we can tap it to each player gains control of creatures he or she owns. Idyllic Grange, enters the battlefield untapped if we have 3 or more other planes, and when it does enter the battlefield untapped, we put a 1/1 counter on target creature we control. Then we have Nixos, Shrine to Nyx. Tap it to add a colourless. Tap 2 to choose a colour. Add to our mana pool any amount of colour equal to the devotion to that colour. Seraph Sanctuary, when it enters the battlefield, we gain 1 life, or whenever an angel enters the battlefield under our control, we gain 1 life, and we can tap it to add a colourless to our mana pool. Path of Ancestry, enters the battlefield tapped, we can tap it to add a mana of any colour and our commander's colour identity, and when that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we get to scry 1. And then finally we have Temple of the False God, which we can tap to add 2 colourless mana, activate only if we control 5 or more lands. A lot of people complain about this card being naff, because if you keep it in your hand and you've got less than 5 lands on the battlefield, you can't use it. I've never had a problem in mono-coloured decks playing this card and getting enough lands out, so I think this is not a bad card in mono-coloured decks. Maybe if it was 2 or more colour, maybe if I didn't think I could get that many lands out, or I'm playing competitive mana, which competitive lands deck, and if that's the case, then I might put it in there. But yeah, Temple of the False God's really good in monocolor decks. And then we have 28 planes, 28 basic planes in the deck. So thank you so much for watching our video. The deck list is in the description below. Please like, subscribe, comment should you enjoy our content, and if you want to have a look at our deck lists on Moxfield, please find the link below. We also have links for our Discord. Come play games with us, enjoy free content for visitors to the channel, which will be upcoming soon. We welcome all players to our community from all walks of life, so please feel free to come and introduce yourselves. We look forward to seeing you there. Good luck and goodbye.